You're listening to UCW Radio. In your face.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
For lack of a better word, it's good.
You know what I mean?
Money to be made in a place like this.
Money never sleeps, pal.
You're crazy.
You know what it takes to sell real estate?
It takes brass.
I'm falling, and I can't get up.
All right, welcome back to Money Never Sleeps. We've been away for a few weeks, so I hope everyone had a great holiday, great New Year's, of course. Midnight hour, a deal was made, and we're going to get into this with John Dines of REO Capital. John, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Lou. I appreciate being back on.
We always appreciate your input here because you know you've been speaking about the fiscal cliff for a little bit, and now a deal was made, midnight hour deal. What's your take on it?
Well, obviously the can's been kicked down the road briefly. However, the new Congress faces three major financial issues before late March. Number one, the debt ceiling by early March. Number two, massive across-the-board spending cuts known as sequestration by March 1st. And finally, three, reaching a budget resolution by March 27th. And for those of your listeners who are not too familiar with sequestration, I'd like to kind of go over a little bit of that just for their edification.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Under sequestration, the amount of money equal to the difference between the cap set in the budget resolution and the amount actually appropriated is called sequestered by the Treasury and not handed over to the agencies to which it's originally appropriated by Congress. In theory, every agency has the same percentage of its appropriation withheld in order to take back excessive spending on a across-the-board basis. However, Congress has chosen to exempt certain large programs from sequestration, such as Social Security and certain parts of the defense budget and a number of other programs, which means that sequestration will have to take gigantic shares of the budget remaining in other programs in order to achieve that total cutback required. The prospects of sequestration has thus come to seem catastrophic that Congress so far has been unwilling to actually let it happen. Instead, Congress has repeatedly chosen to raise the budget resolution spending caps upward toward the end of the legislative sessions in order to match the actual totals being appropriated. So, in a sense, what we've seen is in the past, again, Congress kicking the can down the road as well.
Okay, so that's going to that sounds like more trouble for us in the near future.
Yeah, in a sense, this sequestration came from a fiscal policy originally provided in the Grad-Rudman-Hollings Deficit Reduction Act of 1985 in an effort to reform congressional voting procedures to make the size of federal government's budget deficit a matter of conscious choice rather than simply an arithmetic outcome. And so far, we've not seen that take place. So here we are now, getting ready for really another large fight in Congress, which is going to be over the debt ceiling.
And
of course,
a lot of these. I was just going to say a lot of these points are, you know, these bills that these things that they're going over right now. You know, so some of these items are like 20, 30 years old. They're not current, and it's just interesting.
What's disturbing is President Obama has repeatedly said that he does not intend to negotiate with Congress over the question of whether or not the debt ceiling should be raised. And that to me is troubling because there's been talk that he actually thinks he's like the King of England, where he can just go ahead and does not need permission of Congress to raise the debt ceiling, that he can just do it without Congress's permission.
No, I mean, that's why we have Congress and Senate, because, certain things can't get done that easily. Hence the problem with trying to get a deal in the first place.
Correct. And, of course, we're spending a terrific amount of money in interest payments on a monthly basis. And what's disturbing is that if we continue down this road, then, of course, we may very well end up just like Europe.
No, let's hope not. We don't need issues like that. But we do have a lot of problems here. And, with this deal that this midnight hour deal that they came to, John, a lot of devils in the details. You have certain things that were, the tax, that as far as the taxes are concerned, that became permanent. Okay, and still we're going to be facing, I think, as you said, I think in March there's going to be another thing going on, and then another thing and another thing. It amazes me that you have all these politicians. You figure with all these politicians, they'd be able to sit down and figure this whole thing out. You have a lot of smart people. You think they would be able to figure this out?
Well, it's interesting to me also, and being in Detroit here, typically most of the papers and most of the media is slanted to the left, but yet I'd like to kind of share with you a couple of things that were in print in the Detroit News. And back in December 9th, the editorial page stated, the GOP is moving, Obama should too. Republicans have signaled a willingness to compromise on the fiscal cliff solution. Obama has gone the other way. And then in December 30th, Sunday, the title was Take a Jump Off the Fiscal Cliff. And it says, the president keeps telling the lie that his agenda can be funded simply by taxing the upper middle class and the wealthy. And he says, chug that Obama Kool-Aid if you want, but if the final fiscal cliff negotiations raise the full $160 billion from upper income earners the president is requesting, it will still leave roughly $800 billion of his annual spending plan unfunded.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. The reality is taxing, the wealthiest Americans, thinking that you're going to make that gap narrow doesn't make any sense, because even if you were to tax them at 50%, still it wouldn't cover the deficit that we have, not even anywhere close, and to fund the quote unquote spending, the projects that are there. And we've spoken about that time and time again, with money going out for these programs. And right. To me, there was something on the, and it floored me, because I'm just going to go into this. They were debating on the flood deal with Hurricane Sandy. Okay, and of course they came to a preliminary deal for $9.7 billion. They have another, 50-something billion to decide next week. But in that whole package, they allotted $150 million for ground fishermen. Now, I don't even know what this is, but it's funny that you have money allotted for things that really, the average Joe wouldn't even know what it is, because I have no clue what it is. And that's just one example of money being spent ridiculously, because what is it for?
In an article dated January 4th, Get Ready for Another Debt Ceiling Fight, in the end, one of the things that we talked about in our last conversation online was, it says, although I suspect in the end President Obama's no negotiations position isn't going to withstand scrutiny, the markets are likely to be spooked. There will be warnings of another downgrade in the nation's credit rating. And perhaps when that happens, our leaders will be spooked into doing something responsible.
So, it's funny, John. They talk about credit ratings on sovereign nations, and the thing that makes me laugh about that is, it doesn't matter. The U.S. had had the worst credit rating out there, we would still be able to function, and people would still buy the debt, and they would still invest in the country. And these credit rating agencies, as far as I see, they're no. You would think they'd be experts in what they do, but obviously, they've been proven time and time again not to be. I don't care if you're Moody's or whatever.
The point I was getting at was that although the markets rallied after that last minute deal, as I mentioned in my blog, that we're going to see the financial markets indeed be spooked. The equity rally is going to be short-lived. We're not going to see the bond market. Already they're talking about in the Wall Street Journal, junk bonds last year were yielding 12%. This year they're yielding no more than 7%. The bond market is going to take a hit. The equity markets are going to take a hit. There's no question about the fact that all of this lack of spending cuts that are initiated, the Democrats think that they're going to just be able to raise taxes and not cut spending and not do any entitlement reforms is foolish at best.
Yeah,
the markets will end up reflecting that.
And the thing is that I was reviewing parts of the deal that they made, and basically I think the cuts were minimal, but they're saying that over the course of 10 years that it should be reduced to, I forget what the numbers were, but the whole thing still doesn't make any sense to me. It still doesn't make any sense to me on how they kind of laid this whole thing out. It's like nothing really changed, and spending's still going to be coming. And I don't know how they expect us as a nation to actually come out of this problem that we've been in. For how many years has it been, John, that we've been in this issue? It's been a while.
Exactly. Well, on Fox News Sunday, Ohio Republican Jim Jordan told Fox that the Democrats have got the revenues increase they wanted before Congress adjourned, but won't come through on the promise of federal spending cuts when lawmakers tried to address the other fiscal problems before the deadline hits over the next 8 weeks. And Republican Representative Jordan said there's no cuts in there. It's the same old, same old. There are promises from politicians, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And a couple of things, because I'm just going to be I have these thoughts in my head that are just going to come out, John. So excuse me, listeners, because I'm just trying to go through the points of the deal that happened and who actually benefited. You had the winners and the losers, in the whole deal. They extended the unemployment. I think it was an additional year on top of what you have. What's your take on that, John? How do you feel about that one?
Well, I think that unemployment extension is going to be needed because of the fact that that number one, just a mere passage in January of the Obamacare cost over 100,000 jobs. that in itself is holding back the economy. The other issues of course, this fiscal cliff were holding back employment numbers from rising. But they're saying that we may have to look at a new economy where in the past we were looking at 4% unemployment as good, where now we may have to look at 7% unemployment as good.
Wow, that's a big unemployment number, without a doubt. Look, I know that you're in Detroit, so the automobile industry, they're beginning to boom again because you have a lot of people drive older cars and they're looking at, if they're financially able to, they'll go and they'll buy a new car. Okay, and I believe, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that some of the automobile companies are trying to come back into manufacturing in the United States. And, things like that create jobs. And I think that as opposed to these politicians fighting on a hill about this, that, and the other thing, they should figure out a way to create jobs. Create jobs, you have revenue flow. You have revenue flow, you have taxes that are being paid. Taxes are being paid. Guess what? You kind of limp out of the problem, little by little, without having to. The
big thing happened in Detroit, in Michigan as a whole, was that Governor Snyder, in a lame duck session, passed the right to work state overnight while Congress was sleeping, and now instead of being locked into a state that's represented by the unions, we are now a right to work state. Hallelujah.
Yeah, well, and I've said this time and time again. Look, him coming through with that, I commend him on it. I'm sure a lot of people aren't happy, so hopefully he has his security strong, which is good. But the unions, initially they had that purpose in certain industries, and especially in the automobile industry, there comes a point where you have to, kind of back up because you start out with $1, then all of a sudden you're at $50, and then you're wanting more and more from these companies. But these are the companies that are creating jobs and creating revenue flow in the United States. And if they're going to if they have the ability to go manufacture somewhere else cheaper and produce the same quality product, they're going to do it.
It's exactly what happened here, right near me. The Lincoln Wixom plant was manufacturing all the Lincolns here in Wixom, Michigan, and closed the plant down, and they went ahead and built a new plant in South Korea. And a friend of mine talked with the president of Ford Land Development and said to the president, why not sell that land and the equipment to one of your competitors and utilize, because this land is acres and acres and acres, and it's a huge factory that takes up at least 5 city blocks. And the president of Ford Land Development said to my friend, we could have given away the land for free and the equipment with it. And he said no other competitor would have taken it because the unions are choking Michigan.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that. I believe that wholeheartedly because the unions, again, they had their purpose, but in the auto industry, they shouldn't even be because when you're paying someone, 60, 70, and then you double time, you're at $150 an hour to put a nut on the thing, and you have to go and you take these mandatory breaks and so on and so forth. It gets a little much because that's not how we became a power. Granted, there were bad working conditions, way back when, and the unions did their thing, and they bettered everything. But now, with the way we are in the world now, how the internet has made everyone closer, everything else, the way things were back then would not take place today because you have too many people that are vocal.
The media in Detroit filmed guys from that Ford Wixom plant across the street at the bar on a Saturday making double time on the clock. And instead of being on the line doing their job, they were at the bar having drinks, making some $70 an hour.
I believe it. You know, people, people do tend to take advantage when they think they can. When they think that they have a big brother protecting them and they can do no wrong, and they have a union rep and they can't do any wrong. Well, guess what? You know, they're going to go and if they're those type of people, they're going to try to bend the rules as much as they can to their favor. You know, and again, I'm not saying that every union's like this, but you do have things like that occur, and you were talking about proof in video in the news. You know, so things like that do happen. I believe they happen more frequently than we know. Right.
But this whole issue of kicking the can down the road is something that is going to, as they were stating in the article, put us on a path along with Greece, Italy, and Spain. And he suggested that the White House stop dragging out these negotiations. Of course, Nancy Pelosi says that the recent tax increases are not enough to solve the fiscal problem, and argued that additional hikes should be included in upcoming deficit reduction deals.
And I think that, this was all, we're delaying what's going to happen. It doesn't matter, how you slice it and dice it, we're delaying the inevitable. Whether it be by 2 months or 2 years, what was it? The hens have to come to roost, or the roosts have to come to roost. I don't know. Maybe the hens have to come to roost, or the chickens have to come to roost, something like that. But the bottom line is that things have to settle in, and reality has to come into play at some point.
I recall in the Clinton administration when Newt Gingrich shut down Congress for a week because of the debt ceiling and the spending cuts. And inevitably, I think that by March 27th, if Obama doesn't pass a budget resolution, that I truly believe that we'll see that again. We will see Congress shut down because that debt ceiling by March and those spending cuts will have to go into effect. And unless we can go ahead and address those issues in March or prior to March, there's no other choice. I don't think that he's got the veto power to go override Congress.
No, and he doesn't. So what happens? We wind up at a stalemate again until somebody bends and they push things through, or we have this time buying situation as we had. I said this time and time again. When things were going over, they should have just let it go. When we had the financial crisis, let companies fail. They'll build up. We would have been better off, and we would have been dealing with this situation right now a lot better. But because the deficit is so high, people are freaking out. This is not a secret. This has been, they've known about this for the past 12 months. That this was going to happen. No one came. They didn't come to any terms to try to fix it. And now people are looking at it like, oh wow, we didn't go over the cliff. They made a deal. Well, what kind of deal was made? You have to read through it to really have an understanding. Most of the stuff I don't understand.
And you're right. Back in August 2011, they were already talking about the fiscal cliff. And they knew about this deficit progression back in August of 2011 and kicked the can down the road. And, so, yeah, you're absolutely right. We knew about the issue of sequestration and the debt ceiling and the deficits running out of control. And of course, nobody wanted to address it. And nobody wanted to do anything about it.
Yeah, and look, and I hear a lot about, and this is what Obama's been doing, And I understand why he's trying to do it. He's trying to, stimulate the economy with these stimulus plans. The problem is, what are you stimulating? You're stimulating people spending money. People spending money that they do not have. All right, you're not creating jobs. You need to boost the economy. In my opinion, you need to create jobs. You need to have,
Correct.
corporations here, not taking business overseas. You need the GMs, the Fords. You need manufacturing back in this country. Nowadays it's internet, so you have the Facebook, you have LinkedIn, you have Amazon, you have these companies here. That's great, but they create, and Google and stuff like that. But then you have Apple that they're going to be the first $1 trillion company. They are producing their things in China.
Right.
Okay. I mean, can a deal be made for them to produce them here? There are a lot of people out of work. You have a lot of people on unemployment that may need jobs. You have a lot of people on welfare that may need jobs. So this may I'm just thinking out loud here, but I know there are a lot of options that the politicians can actually sit down with these leaders in industry and create some magic and boost the economy and stimulate the economy in that way, as opposed to printing more money and going to the Fed, say, hey, we need more money. Going to China, we need more money. Okay, so but the money's going out the door. When's it coming back?
Well, and my belief is that raising the taxes on small businesses, raising payroll taxes, raising corporate taxes, raising individual ordinary income taxes is going to stifle jobs growth. It's not going to create job growth. It's not going to stimulate the guy to go ahead and raise his workforce by another member of his team. Because he's got extra discretionary income, just the opposite. That discretionary income is going to go towards higher taxes. And even I overheard on Fox, they're talking about Obamacare is supposed to cut the cost of health care, but they said, in fact, it's doing just the opposite. They said that because you're now initiating some 30 million more people into the health care system, that healthcare costs are rising 6 times faster than inflation. So now you've got all these extra people who are going to be participating in healthcare where they weren't before, and now all of a sudden it's causing healthcare costs to rise 6 times faster than the rate of inflation.
And that wasn't the plan.
Correct.
And this is why this whole deal doesn't make any sense.
It's the short-sightedness on behalf of this administration that is looking at growth, economic growth, and stimulation of the economy through rose-colored glasses and through one pair of glasses only. And they're not seeing the entire picture. They're not seeing how are you going to pay for this extra $800 billion? And it's not going to come from raising taxes. And inevitably, they talked about how, it's not going to affect the people over $450,000. It's going to affect everybody's taxes.
Of course it's going to affect everybody's taxes.
Taxes are going up.
And see, they're making it seem like we came to a deal midnight hour, and all of a sudden, people that make up to $400,000, they're safe. They're not safe. Whether you make $1, whether you make $10 billion, you're going to get hit in some way. And on top of that, then you have this 3.8% health care tax stuff. It's like ridiculous.
When in fact they said between $40,000 and $60,000 a year income, you're going to look at another $2,200 to $2,500 a year in additional taxes. And
see, taxing the individuals, I mean, I get that you have to get the money from somewhere, but for God's sakes, at least pull back and allow, small business, allow industry, allow manufacturing, allow these companies, kind of give them enough breathing room so they can grow. You take that away from them, then we're all going to suffer. Because I'm sure no one has a problem paying what they need to pay, paying their fair share. But if you're trying to stimulate growth in the country and giving these small businesses, giving these larger companies, giving them the breaks that they need for them to continue to grow here in this country, not overseas. Make a deal. They have to do it here. Create jobs here. You do that, you're going to get this type of deal. You're going to get this type of break. And they used to do that in the past. I don't see that happening now.
Well, what concerns me is that by bombarding the small business owner from every aspect, from increased payroll taxes, increased health care taxes, increased corporate taxes, increased ordinary income taxes, there's no room for that growth. There's no room for those extra jobs and that job growth to take place. I think you're right. If you want to, make people pay for their fair share, let's go ahead and we have to raise some ordinary income taxes on the wealthy. But to go ahead and raise corporate taxes again when they're already at the 35% rate, and then to go ahead and, in addition to that, cost them additional money for health care costs. They said that most small businesses now will just opt out of providing health care altogether for their employees, which means then that we're back to the same starting point where we were before Obamacare took place. And
again, it's like we're going around the round and we're never stopping, and there's never nobody's jumping off this merry-go-round. I don't see them even making the attempt. All the meetings and all the talk on the television, radio, this, that. We're trying, we're doing this, we're doing that, and what happened? All these months of people worried about the cliff, the fiscal cliff. You have colleges taking that term. It's a banned term to use. They can't use that term anymore because it's so kind of run into the ground. But we're now, with all this stuff happening, they make a deal. And does it change anything? No. Markets go up. Does it have anything to do with the deal? I don't know. People want to think that's the case. There are a lot of people that think differently. So, again, I think that our politicians have to smarten up, and they have to, they're smart people. You got elected. You're smart people. You can't figure out how to create business, how to create jobs in this country, how to build companies, and you have a lot of people that are in politics, the Senate or Congress, that are businessmen that have built companies. Take a page out of Jamie Dimon's book, and maybe we'll learn something. He's a great businessman.
Now they wanted to float the idea of $1 trillion coin as an answer to the debt ceiling standoff.
Oh my God! They'll give that to Apple. Oh my God!
It's just amazing to me that you're right, that these intelligent people can't come to an agreement because of partisanship, and yet President Obama's talked about a bipartisan solution, and he has made it quite evident that he has no interest in a bipartisan solution.
Yeah. And then the sequester that you're talking about, that's only postponed for 2 months.
Right.
So come March, we're going to be dealing with yet another issue. Wow. A lot of stuff happening, and also the payroll tax cut that's been in effect, for I don't know how long, but that ends. That 2% payroll tax cut, that's going to end, that ends now. So
did you hear on the news Harry Reid, the Senate Democrat, called John Boehner a dictator?
Yeah.
And and John Boehner made a phone call that morning, the next morning, to Harry Reid, and I'm so glad that somebody actually, like John Boehner, took the initiative to be frank with Harry Reid and told him to go F himself.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's funny. See, someone like Boehner, I like him because he'll say what's on his mind, and he'll be. I mean, in my opinion, he's been as straight up as a person could be in politics.
Right.
Throughout this whole situation, the Senate bouncing around, who, what, where, why, and no one knows. And meanwhile, you had that you had a bill that kind of could have fixed everything or even made things better that Obama was looking at, but they didn't push through. This was a couple of years ago, so I don't know. I mean, I think that people have to look beyond the politics, beyond the bull crap, and try to figure this out. Because if we don't figure this out, all this stuff is delaying the inevitable.
True.
I mean, we almost had the dairy cliff. My milk was going to go to $8. those poor cows.
Yeah, and they said if we don't get the farm bill passed, that milk at the grocery store will be $7 a gallon.
Yeah, see, farming, that's important stuff. Okay, we should cultivate that, no pun intended, but cultivate it and embrace it and help build that, because that's a big money maker, okay, for this country. We grow things, we sell them, we make.
And getting back to your point about Detroit, Romney said, and what they took out of context was, he said, let General Motors go through an organized bankruptcy proceeding. And, instead we got the bailout. But in the end, the taxpayers lost out on $6 billion on that deal, on that bailout, because General Motors, the stock was a bad deal for the shareholders.
Yeah. And in that whole deal with the automotive industry, I got to say that the one company that when it happened, I had respect for Ford. All right, because when the CEO of the company, Ford Jr. or the third or the fifth, whatever he is, he actually stepped down voluntarily, and he put somebody in place that was a reorganization specialist to help the company. They didn't want any money. They didn't need it. They did their thing. All right, and I think that if the government stops, you don't need to bail people out. If you make a mistake, you're going to get spanked. Okay, you made the mistake. You're not going to make it again. But with all this saving and everything, of companies that created all this madness, I think it just put us in such a position that people think that there's no accountability. There's no accountability for their actions. That you do something like that, you're going to get bailed out by the government. And,
right,
and I think
that's where the comments made were taken out of context, and I think that there was some validity to his comments, and an organized bankruptcy probably would have been the best thing in the end for the company and for the economy, and we wouldn't have been in a position where the U.S. government lost out on, and the taxpayers lost out on $6 billion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, if you look at Donald Trump, okay, I mean, this is a guy, he's brought his company to bankruptcy so many times, but that's how you go, and you get yourself protected so you can reorganize and come out stronger. And if anyone, he's proof positive that it works, that you can do it. Debtors and everything, they sometimes, they'll get spanked on it, but you're actually, you're having a company come out stronger than they were going into an organized bankruptcy. And if they would have let General Motors go through that, I think that company would be a lot better off.
And one of this, more to balance the budget, the president fulfilled his campaign promise to raise taxes, but he also promised a balanced approach. So we at least need that. So that, I agree with that. They said that let's not waste any more time on this waste government spending, and let on the taxing so that we can at least in 10 years pay down some of this deficit. Obviously, we're not going to fulfill it.
Right. Well, let me ask you this: what's your opinion on the so-called, quote unquote, doc fix? The thing with that has to do with the healthcare field, doctors and Medicare reimbursements and so on and so forth.
And now, but
right.
Adjusting the late cost.
I think we're losing you, John. I think we're losing you a little bit.
Are you there?
I'm here. I
Okay.
think we just the connection went bad for a minute.
That we, because of the number one, the average age of the individuals is increasing. It used to be 68, and now it's 82.
Right.
So we need to make the adjustments accordingly in these entitlement programs, and I think that's what Boehner was trying to get across to the President Obama, that these entitlement programs have to be reformed.
Yeah, well, they have to definitely reform the entitlement programs, and this is something that you and I probably differ on. I have no problem with the Medicare and so on and so forth for the elderly. They've been around, they put their time in, they should be entitled to what they put into the government. But you have a lot of other entitlements like welfare and so on and so forth. People take advantage of the system, and I'm saying it because it's a reality. You have people that do not need these entitlements that are actually, using the system to their advantage, and I think it's just bad for the economy. But that's something that we're never going to be able to uncover, But the one thing that the government can do is actually, come up with something that makes sense, because all this spending has to subside. We can't keep spending without creating jobs. And it goes back to what I said earlier, creating jobs.
Right. And as far as those type of entitlement programs go, there needs to be some more policing of these distributions that are going out to welfare, that are going out to food stamps. People on the streets are getting these food stamp cards, and they're selling them on the streets for half of what they're worth. People in welfare are having more kids just to increase their checks every month, when they can indeed go out there and become a productive part of society, but instead have chosen the route of staying at home and collecting a welfare check.
I agree with you on that, because look, if you have 2 legs, you can walk. You have 2 arms, and you can lift things. You can get to work. There's no excuse for it, And again, some people, I think in this society, especially in this country, we give the opportunity for people to be lazy. and that's what
Right.
it is. That's the reality. People. If you give people a free ride, they'll go and take advantage of it, and they'll be lazy.
Right.
But I do think. Well, let me just add this.
There needs to be some type of audit system.
I agree.
This closer so that that people taking advantage of the system can be minimized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, one thing I do agree with, and I have to add this, that you have people out there that actually need it, and these are the people that should get it. You have people that don't need it, that are getting it. Okay, and meanwhile, they're buying new cars and this and that, and they're living the life, but they're not working and not doing anything productive, in society. And I think that's where you have the problem, because you do have people that actually need it, people that are disabled, people that maybe a single mother that has 2-3 kids and they have to take care of them. I get it. You need that. Because you need the help. You need to help the people. But you have people that are, in their early 20s. They're getting welfare. Really? Are you freaking kidding me? See, I'm not going the Boehner route. But are you kidding me that that's okay?
I commend someone who has to refrain so much in Congress every day when he's negotiating day in and day out, and when it started with Tim Geithner proposing their side of the fiscal cliff solution, and Boehner, his reply was, "You can't be serious." To the point where you get another senator saying that it's all the Republicans' fault, and that he's a dictator and he's ruining the country's chances for getting back on track. And there's this constant blame. Instead of taking fiscal responsibility, they're using the blame game from the previous administration. They're using the blame game, or Obama is using the blame game for Congress instead of taking responsibility for the deficits that he racked up. It wasn't Congress. Congress had to approve it, but it was his initiative. It wasn't Congress proposing those spending $4 trillion on bridges and roads to try to stimulate the economy.
No, I mean, to me, it just it makes me laugh sometimes, because you see the BS that happens, and you just sit there and sit on the sidelines, just watch how people start pointing fingers. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. But we're all in the problem together. So instead of pointing fingers, just fix it. But fixing it is too easy. It can't be easy, because if it's that easy, that means anyone can do it. So it has to be made to look difficult. And you have all these underlying clauses and deals within deals that happen. And I mentioned the Sandy relief situation with the flood insurance. That I got very annoyed with that, because you have people, and I see it. You have people that are homeless. You have people still with no electricity in their home. Okay, you have people, and I saw something on the news. There was one old elderly couple, okay, on Staten Island. Their home got destroyed, and I think it was Allstate. They had some commercial, whatever. They were just going to give them $10,000 for their home. $10,000. Your home is flattened to the ground. On a $600,000 house, they're going to give you $10,000 because of this flood thing. And they only passed that $9.7 billion deal because there were so many underlying things in the middle. There was a deal within a deal, and I mentioned that $150 billion, what was it, million? Yeah, $150 million thing for ground fishermen, which still I don't understand that. Okay, is that a necessity, or trying to build up a community that was devastated by a massive hurricane? Is that less important than somebody fishing for fish that apparently are on the ground. I don't know, ground fishermen.
No one wants their budget cut. No one wants to take responsibility for their constituents. It's make the other guy pay. It's not me though, but make the other guy pay. And even the Fix the Debt co-founder, Bowles, said on Sunday's Meet the Press that he called for a more balanced solution, including spending cuts in the next round of negotiations. And he said, quote, "We have to slow the growth of entitlement spending." And he was, of course, Clinton's chief of staff. And he said a big part of going forward has to be entitlement reform.
And still, you can say that 1,000,001 times. Still, people will ignore it. They'll ignore it, and you have the Senate that doesn't want to hear that. Okay, Congress is all in to cut these entitlement spending situations, but is that ever going to happen? Unless if we were creating jobs and there was money flowing, no one would say boo to these entitlements. But because they're they're spending more on the entitlements than putting towards creating jobs, it creates. There's a big disparity. You're spending 10 times more than you're creating. How does that work out? If that was in someone's home, they would be without a home. They would be homeless.
It's like I said in the last show that it'd be like giving my 18-year-old daughter a credit card and giving her a credit limit, and she runs up the card on the credit limit and says, "Dad, I need another credit card because that card is at its limit." And I give her another credit card to keep spending. And that's something that what I see is in March, this debt ceiling, the sequestration, spending cuts, and the budget resolution that are all going to take place by the end of March, I forecast that we will see Congress shut down. And I don't think that – I think that Boehner's already drawn a line in the sand, and Mitch McConnell also has said, we're not bargaining on this one. We're on the debt ceiling. We're not going to go ahead and give one bit on this debt ceiling.
I wouldn't be shocked if you're right. I wouldn't be shocked if you're right, John.
So we're gonna see this spending come to a drastic halt. That of course one side did not want, the other side did want, but from that point we're going to see them sort out, or they'll be forced to sort out which programs they are going to cut back on, and it's going to take a shutdown of Congress to do it.
And I wouldn't be shocked that happens. And you mentioned Geithner. Geithner at this point, when he was in charge of the New York Fed, he's a different man now, and he's on his way out. And in my opinion, Jamie Dimon's probably the best choice to put in there because, he's a businessman, and he understands how he's not a politician per se. He's a businessman, so he can probably bring some positive things in there. And he's not a Goldman guy, so that's a positive.
Right.
He's not a Goldman Sachs guy.
Obama's already got a choice for secretary treasurer, and he doesn't have much experience with budgets.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice, and that'll just maybe he may do a better job. I don't know. No experience. All right, let's just get this done.
And that's why I said in my blog that be prepared that REO Capital predicts a financial crisis in 2013.
Well, then we have it right there that REO Capital is predicting this financial crisis, and this comes to a head. So our listeners know this on March 27th, and that's when things are going to get interesting. And also, you have like the end of February, you have something going on with the Treasury. okay, which also is gonna kind of throw things out of whack again. A lot of things are gonna come to a head.
You have the debt ceiling in February, and then you have in March, beginning of March, you have sequestration, and then the end of March you have the budget resolution.
You have three things. They always say bad things happen in three. So there you go. But hopefully there's some resolution. And again, spending cuts, tax increases, so on and so forth. It's great that they're juggling with all this stuff, but again, in my opinion, it's basic. It's basic. Create jobs. Period. The end. It's not that crazy to do. You have kids going to college that are coming out to no work. I talked to kids that graduated college 2 years ago. Guess what? They can't find a job in what they went to school for. Okay, so they have to go and they have to go wait tables. They have to do what they need to do to just pay the debt, that they incurred going to college trying to better themselves. So that also leads us to question, are we gonna create a society where kids don't go to college because they can't afford it?
Perhaps in a lasting thought, what we should do is get a committee of major economists from every part of the United States together in a super committee, and have these economists put together all of the various Keynesian theories and all the rest of their economic theories, and come up with a solution to the president. Instead of getting the president of General Electric on his super committee, perhaps they should have a super committee of economists put together their thoughts and solutions to the president and come up with a real stimulus package.
They need to do something before this because this is just going to continue to happen time and time again, and it's just getting a little ridiculous because we're never going to recover. I would even say, if the powers that be in the federal government, why don't you go look at what Governor Rick Scott is doing in Florida? Why don't you go look even in your backyard, John, or what's happening over there with your governor and what they did with the unions? You have to smarten up and you have to do what's best. So if like in Florida, they're looking to create jobs. They're looking to bring industry there. Rick Scott is focused on technology. He's trying to make that into the next Silicon Valley, and I commend him for that. And I think he's going to get it done. You need to create opportunity for business. Right. And that's what they're doing. They're doing it in Michigan. They're doing it in Florida, and they could do it elsewhere.
In the meantime, my firm's looking globally. We're in discussions with a firm, a private equity firm out of India that invests in lower and middle market companies in India to create a growth fund to stimulate returns with companies coming out of India. And if you look at Tata Motors, for example, here's a conglomerate that is producing some phenomenal growth. We're also looking in the United States at New York with some companies that are putting together investments in aerospace and consumer services, and they're looking at growth in the 20 to 30 percentiles. So there is, as I mentioned in the last show, there is going to be a fallout. There is going to be many CEOs taking that golden parachute, and as a result of this frustration and people just exiting the marketplace, the investors will find a silver lining in the cloud, in the great cloud, and there will be advantages for people who are looking, and I hope to be able to bring some of those to some of your listeners who are qualified and accredited.
Yeah, well, accredited investors should definitely check out REO Capital LLC.com to find out more, about what you have going on there, John. Because a lot of the things that you say, you're on the money. with your outlook. And I do look in any situation. You have a winner and a loser, and it happens. I don't care if it's baseball, if it's in life. Somebody wins, somebody loses. And for the devastation, financial devastation that is on the horizon, there are people and private equity firms, hedge funds, whatever the case may be. They're sitting on the sidelines. They're waiting. They're waiting for the fallout. And this has happened time and time again. You know, this is where you get the boom. That's why if they would have let things fall down, we would have had this boom already. We would be in better shape right now today. Okay,
and the bottom line is that these firms will have to make up those yields from the lack of the equity market's growth and the lack of the bond market's yields. They'll have to make up that difference somewhere, and I truly believe it'll be in private equity and alternative investments.
Oh, I believe that, you know, because, again, you know, you get private equity, they're an alternative investment. They're looking for, they're waiting. They're waiting. They're going to wait for the fallout, and the fallout's going to be coming, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities that are going to open up, whether it be an industry, whether it be, you know, real estate, whether it be in different areas. There'll be a lot of opportunity for those that have the funds to do it. And you know, in your case, John, accredited investors that you know have an interest in getting involved with these projects of yours, they can just go and check you out because you know you have your fingers on the pulse of what's happening in private equity. So and again, you know you're approachable, so they should actually find out more about what you're doing, because you're not just a single direction fund. You're involved in a lot of different deals, and you work with a lot of different private equity funds. So that makes you different than an actual, you know, single cell private equity fund. You deal with many of them, so it allows you to do a little more. All right, great. All right, John, do you want to close out with anything for our listeners?
I'll leave you with this. It says, as congressional leaders pat themselves on the back and the president returns from vacation in Hawaii, it's clear our fiscal tragedy isn't slowing down, and in fact, it's accelerating thanks to some of the irresponsible decisions that have been made. And let's all hope that as things do settle back into a normal routine back in Washington, that some of this partisanship will indeed also fall by the wayside, and we'll see that fiscal tragedy be averted, and we come to some type of agreement to thwart the debt ceiling issue and all the other issues that were going to take place in March.
No, we can hope. Let's see what happens. See if miracles do happen. Let's see.
To be continued, Lou.
To be continued. And for our listeners, you know, join us next Monday, same bat time, same bat channel, and you know, get some more. We're gonna have some more input from John because he has, you know, every week. You know, he writes his blog. And where's your blog? Is that on Oreo Capital LLC as well?
Correct. It's
okay,
on
REOCapitalLLC.com. Okay, REOCapitalLLC.com. Check out John's blog. He has a lot of stuff to say, and you'll definitely benefit from his writings. And he'll be back next week, as well as I will be back next week, and hopefully you'll be back here next week. Money never sleeps. So until then, you know, keep your hands tight on your wallet, guys, because we don't know what's going to happen. All right, John. Thank you so much, John, and I'll talk to you next week.
Have a good night.
You're listening to UCW Radio. In your face.
What we got here is a failure to communicate.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Greed, for lack of a better word, is good.
You know what I mean?
Money to be made in a place like this.
Money never sleeps, pal.
You're crazy. Don't run when you lose. Don't whine when it hurts.
You know what it takes to sell real estate?
It takes brass balls.
I've fallen, and I can't